Right, we're going to kick off with a bit of an overview today. So we're going to go through a bit of an intro about who I am and Crafted UX, and then we're going to go through some overviews of why a portfolio is really important. Then we'll deep dive into some actionable tips, so five in particular today to help your portfolio stand out and how to structure it, how to kind of represent yourself as well from a personal brand perspective. And then we'll finish today with a little bit of guidance and coaching that we offer at Crafted that could be helpful for you guys. But generally, it's to help grow the community here and to share learnings between you all. So that's the goal of today's
Oh,
session. Oh, I'm just going to mute guys at the moment. Um, Great. So a little bit about my background. So I've been in design for the last 14 years. I started my journey in product design, actually industrial. I used to design fitness equipment for Adidas. So everything you'd see in the gym, from treadmills to running machines to rowing machines, that's essentially what my role was. I started looking into companion apps at that point. This is way before Strava and Peloton existed. And that was my first taste of digital and UX design. And then throughout my career, I've worked at a range of different agencies, consultancies, with some large brands. I've worked at some large corporates like Sainsbury's and Tesco, Digital. And then the last 5 or 6 years, I've been growing design teams at different startups and scale ups, Marshmallow and Brightbook, where I'm currently at. So I've learned a lot over the years. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I want to pass on those learnings to the community and hopefully help you guys get to where you want in your design careers and what you're aiming for. So that's what today's session is part of. And Crafted UX is a sort of business that I founded, and essentially it's to grow a design community that is a little bit different to what's out there. So we focus on being very kind of practical. We focus on case studies that are from the real industry and frameworks that you can actually use. There's a lot of content out there that's very mythology heavy that tells you the end-to-end textbook of how to do the design process, and that's just not what happens in industry. So the goal here is to kind of share learnings and frameworks that you can take and use yourselves and bring that knowledge forwards to build successful careers. Great. So just an overview about portfolio. So again, there's a range of different levels of experience in the call today. But essentially, a portfolio is something that helps tell your story, tells your story of your experience and the impact of what your work has had on businesses throughout your career. Um, and there's the sort of the main rule here I would recommend is that there's a fine balance between working smart and not too hard on your portfolio. You can sink so many hours and weeks into working on case studies, and there's really some high level learnings that you can apply that will help you get noticed by recruiters and hiring managers. And you do not need to involve every single step of your process. So hopefully these tips that I'm about to go through will help save you some time in the future as well. So what does the general path look like to landing a role? Again, for those that aren't as close to the design industry, normally, obviously, you're going to be building your sort of CV and portfolio. You apply for your roles. There'll be multiple interview stages these days, normally between 4 and 5. It's a common theme that there is multiple case study tasks because businesses are are basically trying to make sure that they're making the right decision with who they're hiring. And then there's normally a final cultural stage that you'll go through before getting through to that negotiation stage where you might get an offer, but it might be not be the one that you were looking for. So going back and forth of how to kind of position yourself is something that's really important, and I'll touch on that towards the end of today as well. So today we're going to go through more on the building the portfolio section. So at Crafted, we talk about all these different lessons across different stages of building your experience, building your portfolio, your case studies, and then finally your interview strategy. We're going to focus on the portfolio strategy today, and I'll go through these in a bit more detail now. So just before going into those, there's a range of different platforms that you can build your portfolio on if you haven't already. One of the best is probably Figma, to be honest. There's a lot of new updates they've actually released as of literally this week from their annual conference. around Figma slides and Figma sites that you can create. So it's a great and free tool to use. If not, Wix is still a good tool, Adobe Portfolio, and Squarespace are the ones that I would recommend. And then you've obviously got AI software that you can help supercharge creating your case studies, from things like ChatGPT to UiZard, which is great for creating quick concepts. Okay, the first lesson we're going to go through today is essentially just sharing that your portfolio is essentially like a shop window. So the goal here is to intrigue the recruiter, intrigue the hiring manager, but not to give everything away. And I will kind of reiterate that it is a shop window and not a live story. The hard fact, unfortunately, is that there is a lot of applications for all roles right now. It's a very popular industry. There's normally about 100 plus applications we get a day when we put a role out live. So to stand out from the crowd and that initial scanning is really, really important, because you probably have a matter of seconds to minutes for yourself to kind of stand out. And that's why when viewing CVs and portfolios that are overwhelming can drastically reduce your chance of being seen. So I know it can feel natural to want to include all your experience and to showcase everything that you've learned. But it really is less is more in the case of showing at a high level what projects you've worked on, what skills you've gained, and what value you've added to the business that you've worked for. And if you haven't worked for a business, you can still add value through working with charities or making, I guess, the best you can with your circumstances. If you're doing a case study or a critique on an existing product, you can still put kind of expected return and metrics of what you'd hope to see if it was a real project. Um, and I say your portfolio should almost be framed like a dating profile. So if you think about it in a sense of what's the most interesting parts of your experience, how are you different to other people? I think design is great because everyone comes from a different background. If it's from marketing, data, used to be a teacher, everyone has a different journey to get to where they are, which is, I think, is also a superpower to share because you've got those skills that you've learned over that time. But yeah, essentially that's a high level, and then to find out more, that's when you should build that intrigue, and that's what you set up the first conversation for. So to show a little bit of an example of a homepage of a portfolio, some do's and don'ts. The left-hand side, you can see an overview of multiple projects, 9 in total, all talking about designing some sort of experience. There's some trigger words in there around UX. There's some detailed descriptions. It's quite overwhelming, and it doesn't instantly stand out. It's not instantly memorable, and it's not focused at all for, I guess, what you're maybe applying for. On the right-hand side, you've got the complete opposite to that. So someone that is showing that they are specifically a researcher and strategist, and they've also highlighted that they've worked for NASA and they've worked within an AI space. That's the first things you see from that top view. As you scroll down, they show 3 projects. 3 projects only is what I would recommend, and probably the minimum you need to show a range of your experience and to show those case studies that demonstrate your skills that you've applied during projects. So left to right, normally the most high priority. Another example is this one that gives a little bit more context and a bit more personality, which is always a value add. So they give some examples about their numbers of experience. They show that they're tutoring in their spare time, so they're being proactive. They have a passion for the design field. And then they're just talking through their top 3 projects across different areas, one being in website concepts and workshopping, one being in education, and one being more, I think, research based. So there's a bit of a broad spectrum there. Again, that shop window effect, you're building intrigue, you're wanting the recruiter to click into these projects. They've learned a little bit about you, your personality. And that's the kind of angle that you should be looking at when creating your homepage experience for your portfolio. The next one's around highlighting relevant experience. And this has got definitely 2 different sides to it. So the first one is around the variety can be really useful depending on the role you're applying for. But relevancy normally wins every time when you're applying for senior roles. And I'll explain what I mean about that. So if you're applying for a general design role, so this is a role that's, let's say, an agency where you're working for different clients in different industries, then showing your range and breadth of experience in maybe marketing, in designing app-based, web, data-heavy projects, technical projects, that's a great strength to see and something that's also seen after in consultancies and agencies. However, if you're applying for a more specific job, so let's just say a designer role in a fintech company, let's say Monzo, um, you really want to be highlighting your relevant finance-based projects. And if you haven't got those specific projects, then you can try and highlight ones that would be relevant in the sense of mobile design work, because Monzo is an app-based product or app-focused first. It's very technical. If you have any technical-based products where you've worked with a lot of logic, maybe a lot of compliance. Again, they are all relevant transferable skills that would apply to a role, let's say at Monzo. So think about that if you have your heart set on a certain role and how to showcase those portfolios and case studies on there. And here's two examples of again showing those two opposites. So the left-hand side is a variety-based portfolio. So from a scan, as you go down, you're initially seeing a few different examples. So top left, you're seeing, okay, this is a product, there's a comparison. It looks like some sort of conversion flow. As you scroll down, okay, this looks like it's some branding heavy work. As you scroll down further, these look like quite technical products. You've got dashboards, you've got data visualization, you've got some B2B mentions in there. So from a glance, I can see this person's got a range of experience just from showing images or even going into these projects. On the right-hand side, sorry, you've got a bit more of a deep dive into a certain project. So again, if it was a finance role you were interested in, if you have done a project, this one's with, let's say, BP, looking at their portfolio that they would give to their employees. So again, at a glance, you're seeing details in design exploration, looking at data visualization around yeah, figures and how you can show that in a clear, intuitive way. You're showcasing, you've been looking at portfolios, you're looking at dashboard content and insights and how to bring that out. You're looking at mobile first designs. So all those factors are really important in that type of role that you'd be applying for. And you can pull them out in different ways, even if you didn't have that specific experience to say. Lesson three. So this one's around capturing the reader's attention. And it's so important to give clear titles and context for each of your projects. It's very easy to kind of name your project onboarding flow or web conversion and name the title of the business, but that's again not memorable. It's not specific. It's not clear what that's going to tell them. And again, they're looking at these in a matter of seconds. You want that to be as clear as possible and give the context. So a common mistake I see with a lot of designers at sort of junior to mid levels is that they go straight into talking about what they did. So kind of a step-by-step guide of I did the research, I did some user flows, I created some designs, I did some testing, I created some more designs. And we really miss out the why of why they're creating that project, why they're putting the work in, what's the impact to the business, what's the return on investment to the design. So sharing what the problem was and why it was important for the business really shows your strategic awareness. And normally in the top 5 bullet points of roles at the moment, you'll see one being data driven as a main consistent point. Two is business strategy and awareness of impact of your work, essentially. So yeah, understanding how design relates to the bottom line of making that business profitable, helping scale the business and finding solutions will stand you in really good stead when putting your portfolio together. And there's two examples I'll show you. One's a little bit more detailed and one's more high level and conversational. So this one on the left, it gives an overview at the start of the project. It talks about Marshmallow Miles. They're a first app-based insurance product in the UK. And it says in the second paragraph that you worked in a small team to successfully deliver this new type of product for a younger demographic of 21 to 30-year-olds to help improve their loss ratio, which is basically the amount of risk they can have. And then they go into the challenge, which is the next step. So given the context, the challenge is that because they're a young business, it says in the 5th year here, they're finding it very difficult to sort of find new customers in a new segment. And that means they're very risky the younger they are. And then you've got those bullet points down at the bottom. They're the metrics for the project. So increase the market share of that younger segment, increase the click to paid, remove a higher percentage of risky users. So all those points they've detailed in the first 2 to 3 paragraphs, very clear on the context of what Marshmallow is, their insurance-based product, and the challenge that they're trying to face. There's definitely more succinct ways that you could get that across, and this is a more conversational way to do that. So this is an example from a designer looking at an early stage startup called Sherpa. They're looking at how passionate athletes can enhance their skills through journaling. And their essential goal or their project was given to them by their stakeholders. And they have been asked to kind of challenge the MVP. So they've been given basically a task. They've had some assumption from stakeholders that they don't agree with. So athletes don't journal to improve their athletic performance because reviewing those entries take too much time. And they want to kind of remove going down a rabbit hole and design for real users with real research and insights. So that's just another way of, I guess, framing that context and what their kind of part was in that project. So the left-hand side is, let's just say, a longer-term project that might take 6 months. The right-hand side could be an example of a feature you worked on, and maybe a smaller subset if you were just in part of it or preparing with another designer and had less responsibility. That's a way that you could frame that. Lesson 4. So metrics are one of the key discussion points when reviewing candidates. Just making sure your awareness and expertise here is really important. So yeah, being data-driven is a core requirement for all designers. Putting that into action throughout your projects is really important. And this can come in many different ways. So it can come from those business metrics and KPIs of delivering X number of users, number of return in, let's say, basket experiences. And it could go down to sort of product-based behavioral metrics, which are around things like click-through, session length, bounce rate. And an understanding of both of these is really important to showcase, to show that you're a complete designer and that you're understanding what you're tracking back to from the features you're creating. So KPIs up front, and then your product-based metrics is what you observe through many different data tools that exist, things like Hotjar, FullStory. We use FullStory at Bridebook. It records sessions so we can see how people are moving through our product, and it shows us analysis of how to improve certain areas as an AI plugin, which is, again, saving us time and working smart. So ways that you could practically add that into your portfolio, again, is showing when you're looking at things like customer research, that you're quantitatively focused. So if it's doing surveys, it's showcasing that you're looking at those insights up front. You're trying to understand what those opportunities are, and gain those insights and background. So high-level overviews of surveys is really useful. Detailing all your questions and the answers to each question is not needed. Just surface level, what's the takeaway from that survey? That's more than enough to include in a case study. As you go down into further into a project, you could show something similar to the feature impact. So this is a design from Marshmallow. They're picking an insurance plan here, so there's 1 of 4 options that I need to select from. And this project was to help increase the upsell from the lower to the higher price plans. You've got a clear figure here that shows the percentage increase, and then you've got the reduction in bounce rate from the page as well. So 2 clear product metrics of what that impact had on that feature. It shows that they're aware. It shows that it was measurable, and they've got actionable next steps of what they would want to try next, which includes social proofing techniques and optimizing to 3 plans instead of 4. So there's another example of here where they've used add-ons experience. So hopefully, probably can all think about when buying insurance, it's not the most interesting journey, but when you're selecting your type of cover, if it's from breakdown, if it's your motor legal, this is an example of having too many options actually led to a downfall in click-through. So causing cognitive overload, overwhelming them, and that's why it's showing 8.3% as a negative. And the beauty here is that it's fine to show that your designs failed. And actually, if I see that in portfolios and in interviews, I actually see that as a strength. It shows you're very self-aware. It shows that you're not always right because many times, more than 50% of times, your releases and the features will fail, and you need to learn from it and try again. So really calling those out and showing what were your actions after that to learn from, and how did that then improve in the next step is really important to kind of highlight. Um, and then as we come to the full circle, so the overall impact of the whole project itself. So some of those business metrics could be around, as I stated earlier, increase in a customer segment. So the younger segment you're looking to increase. It could be around click through from journeys. It could be around cost to serve. So that's again quite an important metric these days. With things like customer service, moving to automated chatbots and things like that. That's again a consistent metric that's shown. Then you've got things at the bottom there around push notification opt-in, weekly active users, and in general engagement. So again, these are consistent metrics that are used across products today. We use them at Bridebook to measure basically engagement and how we're performing there. Now on to the last lesson for today. So this one's around the importance of telling a story and not writing just a checklist of steps, because it honestly will not get read and it's a waste of your time. And going back to the first point I made around working smart and not hard, what you can do these days with ChatGPT to help summarize and kind of rebuild your case studies is a great step forward. Really think about those top level bullet points that summarize the steps that you've taken in your projects and try and put that into some sort of story or narrative that can keep someone engaged, that has no context about your business, what you do in your day to day. That's the challenge. So yeah, hiring managers are essentially like just like anyone. If they have a set attention span, they're likely to have no context of your projects. So you don't want to make those assumptions, and you really want to make that narrative simple and compelling. That's a real key skill that I look for when I'm hiring for senior designers, is how can they communicate how they're solving the problem in a clear way that takes people on the journey who aren't designers, people that might work in marketing, might work in data, external stakeholders. You really have to kind of work harder and clearer to make it obvious for them about the impact you've made. And less is more when talking through these projects. So showing those highlight reels is absolutely fine. And having an appendix later down in your portfolio that can contain all the details of your process is a standard format that you can follow. They can look at that information and ask for it if they want to in later sessions. But really those kind of top level highlights is what, again, hiring managers and recruiters are going to be looking at when reviewing your profile. And then finally, just using the STAR framework is one of a few that you could use to anchor your projects. So instead of going through the design process and kind of having them as your titles, how you could use the STAR framework to give a clear structure. And I'll go through what that means in a second. So the cookie cutter checklist, which is what not to do on the left-hand side, is essentially all those steps that you go through in the design process around solving the problem, or how you would solve the problem, doing interviews, personas, sketches, mock-ups, wireframes, new wireframes, testing. They don't need to see all those steps. It's quite obvious that if you're applying for a role and you've got previous experience that you're capable, it's knowing about how you can communicate that story of the decisions you made throughout the process. So how you can storytell is linked to maybe the STAR framework. So how you can state the situation that you're in. So what was the challenge? What's the task that you sort of set to solve? What's the actions that you made? So what were the intentional sort of features that you created, or the research structure that you set up to get the feedback you needed? And then what was the result of that action essentially? So what were the metrics? What were the learnings? And then there's probably one more step, which is what's the iteration? So what would you do next time? What would you improve? And then how would you again remeasure that? And there's some examples here around how you can create content and create a story. One on the left-hand side, I won't read in detail, but I'll I'll pass over the first bullet point. So the goal of this project was to help reduce errors made during the manual configuration of leasing products, because our applications in the ecosystem use our data objects to make calculations and perform contract negotiations. So that's a very long-winded example of showing a lot of understanding from their side, but not necessarily making that into a clear story and narrative. The right-hand side, you can see it goes through around putting yourself in their shoes. So picture yourself as a CEO of a well-known startup that's been growing exponentially in recent months. So that's set the scene. Unfortunately, the company is outgrowing the fraud management solution. So even if you stopped reading by that point, you'd know that that's the business, that's the perspective and growth stage they're at, and they have an issue with their fraud management solution. That's a lot clearer, it's a lot more succinct, and there's a really clear way of getting that across. So yeah, really important to go through that and create that story arc in your case studies. And as I scroll down, there's an example here around a too detailed approach, that I would say, and one that's kind of the perfect level of highlight. So if you keep your eyes on the left-hand side now as I scroll down, this is what I call the cookie checklist. So you're looking at an overview, you're seeing their design process, you've got details of their research plan, their learnings, their next steps, their user flows, their wireframes, their brand guidelines, their prototypes. There's just too much in here to follow in a way that is consumable and again memorable for them to take away. So this is great content. Put that in the appendix, pick out the top 3 or 4 sections that show off your skills, your learnings, and your impact. And that's what the one on the right-hand side does really well. It gives a bit of an overview of the challenge and their role. It shows an instant solution, their general approach, some decisions they made, and then the result. So that's kind of all you need in a core case study. Yes, there could be more steps if you've done something, let's just say more technically advanced around sort of data mapping or architecture. But that sort of 4 or 5 step process is a good one to follow, and one that I'd advise. Great. So they're the top 5 tips that I'll go through on portfolio strategy. There's definitely more within building those case studies and creating those sections that I can share with you in the future. And I've got a link at the end to sign up to our community where we share some more information. But I'm going to go through a little bit more on some of the courses that we run and opportunities we have at Crafted. So a little bit about our values. So we really focus on our frameworks and basically our templates that you can use. So we have things like portfolio templates that you can drag and drop your case studies into and create them in literally seconds, which will save you a lot of time. When we run our courses, we use case studies from industry. I take some from working at Bridebook and other businesses in the past. So you're working on areas that are really specific to industry work right now. And then we pride ourselves on giving a lot of support on career coaching and portfolio and interviewing because we know that's a really hard, challenging part. So you'll always have support from the community and from the instructors at Crafted if you have any questions and need any help there. The last one's just we pride ourselves on being accessible. So there's many different courses out there and ways to and boot camps and things like that cost thousands that really don't need to spend that much. So we sort of want to make sure that it's accessible to all and affordable for the content that you need to build your successful career. So some of the courses that we run at Crafted, we have Foundation, Academy, and Professional, which differ in the level of detail depending on your experience. Foundation's great if you're first into design, you haven't done any courses in the past or worked in the industry. It gives you the foundational modules to build on and learn from. The academy courses, if you have maybe a junior understanding, you've done some internships or a few years in industry, it'll help build that overall understanding of how to get to that senior level and how to build those skills and those frameworks to kind of get to that space. And then our professional course is a 12-week immersive with some partnerships with other businesses, which you can work on case studies with other teams, which is a great insight, as well as some more detail on those courses. We also have some 1 and 2 day workshops around design strategy and leadership. So how you can build those strategic skills and help sort of excel your career into senior and leadership positions. So this is just an example of our academy course and some of the modules that they cover. So everything from product strategy to UX research to automating your process through AI. to user flows, to workshops, to user testing. And as I mentioned before, we offer career coaching and community access to everyone that applies to our courses. You'll also get a course certificate that you verified and you can add to your LinkedIn profile. And we run our sessions on a weekly basis in the evenings online. And you have access to our Slack group at all times to ask any questions if you need them. And this might not apply to everyone on the call, but if these are some of the challenges that you're facing at the moment in your design career, then this is something that we could probably really help you with. So if you're unclear on your best learning path right now of how to get into design full stop, as I mentioned, there's lots of different boot camps out there, and there's no kind of clear roadmap to move from a student to a designer. So that's something that we've been working towards to build a plan for. If you're looking for a career change for a reliable, high earning role, design roles are in the top 15% of salaries in the UK. They're fast growing and it's a great place to sort of build your future into. And if you are someone that is struggling to land a role that might be applying for jobs but not getting anything back from applications or not getting through interviews, again, that's something that we've worked with design students in the past to help get them into those roles and solve those challenges. So at Crafter, we've developed a Get Hired pathway, which goes through a step-by-step guide to help you land a role within 8 weeks. And what that looks like is the first 4 weeks cover our academy course, so going through those design modules and then going into our case study and portfolio workshops where we help craft your portfolio to make help yourself stand out from the crowd and build a compelling offering. And then the last couple of weeks are one-to-one career coaching sessions, which again will help plan your career goals, will help set you up for your initial interviews and answer any other questions that you have there. But we have lots of learnings that we can share from designers that have worked before in the past and help match with your goal at the end of the day. And just to finish up, we have some events and courses coming up. So we have some more talks like this on design principles, and also one coming up on AI and how to supercharge your user research with some really cool tools. We have some workshops coming up each month that we have places left for. And then we also have some career coaching sessions that are available on a monthly basis from myself and other design educators at Crafted, if you're interested in those. Great. So that's near towards the end of today's session. So you can, if you sign up to our community, and I can share the link in the chat shortly, you can get access to this presentation and then other events, early access in the future as well. So I'll make sure to share that with you. And if you go through that link, you can look on our site and browse the courses and anything that's of interest to you. You can book in a call if you have any questions as well on any of that. Great. So that's it for today. Hopefully that was of use in your current design journey. I've got a little bit of time at the end if anyone has any questions they want to put into the chat as we finish. So I'm just scrolling through the chat now. I'm just seeing there's a couple of questions in here. So someone's asked, is it okay to present original work with a client company branding, or should I anonymize and adapt it? It's a really good question, Antonio. So what I would say is that it's probably the worst case scenario if you're interviewing a candidate and their portfolio is basically blurred out because they say they can't show anything because of NDA. That's an instant rejection for me. If they can't showcase their design process and show me some visual designs of how they got there and their result, then that's not going to be enough to land the role. So what you can do if you have that, you can redact some of the key parts of those designs. But themselves, I would say they're fine to show. Always put them behind a password protection on your portfolio as well, and only show them in an interview one-to-one on a live call. Don't just share that on your portfolio publicly, because obviously that would expose yourself to other people seeing that information. So yeah, advise put it behind a password and then redacting any really sensitive information, but it's still okay to show that in interviews, and it's your work that you've created. And you need to be able to sell that and to land your next role essentially. So I'm just looking at some other questions on here. So someone's asked, can you provide a candidate example or case study of how these courses has helped someone secure a design role in a short span of 8 weeks? That's a really good question. So our Get Hired pathway is designed to get you enough, give you enough time to learn those core design skills, to build your design case studies. So at least 2 to 3 is what I'd recommend. And then to get that feedback on your interview process and your communication skills to get yourself ready to start interviewing at 8 weeks. The general amount of time it's taken some of our students after that point completely varies. Some people have landed roles within a couple of weeks from that point. Some have taken a couple of months. But what they have done is got through that initial stage of interviews and landed those initial conversations a lot higher than they were before. And then in the end, they've managed to land a lot of roles. You can see some reviews on our site and testimonials as well. So yeah, that's what I would say. You're ready after 8 weeks. It's still a difficult process to land a role, of course, but we've seen that it helps you get through those stages and gets you in front of those interviews, and then it's a matter of time before you can land that role that you're looking to get. Cool. I'm just looking so that anyone else. So I'm just going to share the link to the community now and here. I said that I would do that, but I haven't done that yet. Bear with me a second. So that's that one, and then the link to our general site is in here. So Neil's asked, I'm 60 years old, a design graduate, but have been teaching. How best could I apply for work in industry now? I think I need a little bit more context there, Neil, but I'll do my best to answer, and we can obviously chat afterwards as well. But I think, yeah, if you've been teaching, you have a lot of skills that you can apply. You can put that into your portfolio and CV. And I guess the case studies that you create, if they are specific to certain industries, that is something that you can create. So I think if I was hiring someone with a lot of experience in other industries and teaching, I know they're going to be a great communicator. They're going to be very adept to working with teams and collaborating. So that puts you ahead in so many different spaces there. So maybe it's more the technical skills that someone would be looking more at for a candidate like yourself. So the visual design aspect and how you work in Figma and how you sort of understand maybe technical requirements with engineers and things like that. So how can you kind of fill those gaps in outside of those? No worries, Neil. I'm just going to look at some last few questions in here. Again, feel free to ask anything else if you have any questions. So David's asked around building a portfolio in Figma or Wix, Frame or Webflow. What's your preference? Great question. I would always say start with Figma, mainly because it's the number one tool used by all businesses today to build products. So if you familiarize yourself with that now for your portfolio, you're a step ahead when you start your role. 2, it's free. You can create an account just like that. And then 4, they've just released something called Figma Sites, which essentially is a way to you to manage your content, just like a Wix in Figma. So it's becoming a tool for every feature essentially these days. So yeah, big advocate for Figma as the main tool. Framer as well is a good one. I've used that to build websites and products before. So that's another one to use. It's a bit more technical. And last question from Sabrina. So any key differences for portfolios for a design manager? So that's a really interesting question because as a design manager, you're less doing the IC work, delivering features, and you're more responsible for things like design operations. So what are the ways of working of the team? What's the collaboration with other parts of the business? How have you optimized your workflows with engineers? They're all the kind of questions that I would love to see if I was hiring a design manager. So I think it's definitely a mix of your IC skill to show that you've done that, you've got that technical understanding, and then how you've kind of displayed your design ops skills, improved your ways of working in other scenarios in the past to help the business become more efficient, and so on. So yeah, any way that you can measure that as well with surveys and feedback from even other people that you've managed, it can be very useful. But I would say generally as a design manager, it's less visual heavy and it's more about processes and again, business understanding, strategic understanding, looking at things like product vision. Those areas I'd look for more in a portfolio. So you can talk to those more in the interview. You can have decks as well. It doesn't have to be in a portfolio as much if it's not design heavy role. Uh, some questions here from Juliana. Is it possible to move your portfolio from one platform to another, like moving it from Wix to Wixfolio? Or would you build it from scratch? Again, a great question to save you time. I think if you built it in a platform like Wix or a WordPress, then it's going to be hard for you to move over. What I would say is that it's not a bad thing to start again because you can basically use your Figma or your new platform as your blank slate. So you can have your top one or two projects. From what you've learned maybe today and from previously, you'll be able to set them up in a different way to before. So you can use that as your main portfolio, but you can also keep your old portfolio as a link if they want to see some more experience. So you haven't got to move it all over at once. You could just do project by project. You could look to kind of simplify. You could add some drafts of projects that you've done, but not actually be able to click through to them again. So it shows that shop window effect. And that's probably the best way that I would approach doing that. Kimball's just asked, what's a great resource for finding prompts to make personal projects? That's a really interesting project. I'll share actually afterwards if you in the email if you sign up to the community some interesting links for idea generators. So that's one that we do sometimes on a bi-weekly when we do design collaboration sessions at Bridebook. What else I would say is personal projects. What apps and products do you like using? So what are your passions? Do you like using? Are you a fitness advocate? Do you like using Strava? Do you love music? Do you use Spotify? Do you love Instagram? Watching funny memes? Pick one of those that you use because you'll be an expert in using that product and do a design critique on it. So what UX can be improved, what UI could be improved. Pick a specific feature, critique it, and then show some improvements that you could use. It's a great way to also to interview people that in your group, your community that are using that product as well. So easy access to insights. So that's a great way. If it's more jobs focused, I would say it is absolutely very impressive if you come across a candidate has done a critique on your product that they're applying for. So if it's a specific role and you have time, then that's a great one to focus on, just a small critique on part of their product, and then you can go into it in that way. Great. Okay. So I think that's maybe out of time for any more questions, but these are all really interesting. And if you guys sign up to the community, I'll give a bit more of an overview and try and answer some more of those questions on the email list. But lovely to meet you all today, and stay tuned. Come to our next talks, and I hope you enjoy your evening.